It's true. Time is a thief. For years I thought I was waiting for the right time to focus on myself, the right time to take care of my health, the right time to go after the things that I had kept thinking about in the back of my mind, those little things that start off as whispers and over the years they just get louder and louder. The right time to make changes that I knew I needed to make, but I felt crippled. I felt paralyzed. The right time to finally choose myself with no guilt. But somewhere along the way, I realized something that really stopped me dead in my tracks. And that is the fact that life is not waiting for me. The calendar will keep moving. I feel the older I get, the faster the days, the weeks, and the months go by. The years will keep passing. And that right time that I kept waiting for, it never showed up. It never showed up. And I don't know who needs to hear this today, but if you've been waiting for permission to start living your life, then this is definitely for you. Because what I've learned, especially after turning 50, is that waiting can quietly become a habit, a bad one, a, a, a habit that we rely on and identify with. And habits have a way of stealing years from us without us even realizing it. The interesting thing is, I didn't wake up one day or one morning and decide that, okay, today's the day I'm going to put my life on hold. No, it happens gradually, it happens quietly, and in ways that felt completely reasonable at the time because it doesn't usually look like waiting. It looks like responsibility, it looks like being dependable, it looks like putting everyone else's needs first because that's what you've always done. That's what we've always been expected to do. And for most of my life, personally speaking, I felt like I was on autopilot. It looks like doing what has to be done. And to be fair, there were seasons of my life where that was exactly what was needed. There were bills to pay, mouths to feed, people depending on me, responsibilities that frankly couldn't be ignored. It's life. That was the season. But somewhere underneath all of that, something slowly started to shift, especially in my 40s. I couldn't see it, I couldn't feel it because of my autopilot mentality. And it's also because I never took the time to ask myself what I needed. I never made it to my own list. I became so focused on getting through the day, getting through the week, the next obligation, that I told myself, oh, there'll be time for me later. I'll focus on me later. I accepted it as my norm. Later, it became kind of like my anthem. Later, when things slow down, later, when life gets easier, later, when my daughters are off to college and I become an empty nester, later, when everyone else needed less from me. But notice, I was not a part of that. And the problem was that later never really arrived. And that realization made me super uncomfortable. Because once I stopped blaming my schedule, once I stopped blaming my responsibilities and stopped blaming everybody else, I had to look at something deeper, a lot deeper. It wasn't just that I was busy. It was that I had made myself last or non-existent on my own lists, but I didn't even realize it. I didn't even notice it. And the truth is, life doesn't hand us empty calendars. We have to decide what we matter. We have to decide that we matter enough to make room for ourselves. My dad always told me, we make time for what is important. This season, this decade, this is when things started to shift and I made myself a priority. The realization that the beginning of everything changing starts with me. Because once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. And I started to notice other ways I had been waiting. Even when opportunities were right in front of me, I would still hesitate. And it's not because I didn't want them. It's not because they weren't important. It was because I kept telling myself that I wasn't ready, that I wasn't confident enough, that I wasn't prepared enough, that I wasn't certain enough. And I used to believe that confidence came first, right? I thought confident people acted, and then the rest of us, we were just waiting around until we felt sure. So there's the people that are confident and move forward, and then there's the rest of us. But what I've learned is that confidence doesn't come before action. It comes from action. It comes from showing up when you don't feel fully ready. It comes from trying even when you're unsure, even when you're in doubt. It comes from learning as you go. This YouTube channel is the perfect example of that. The women we admire, they're not fearless. They just stopped waiting for fear to disappear. They took action. And once I stopped waiting to feel confident, I started discovering what I was actually capable of. But confidence wasn't the only place that I was waiting. And this is a hard truth. There was something a lot deeper, something that I didn't fully understand at first. I was still looking outside of myself for permission. Yes, permission. I'm not ashamed to admit it. Permission to change my life, permission to make the decisions, permission to do things differently than I had always done. I wanted reassurance. I needed validation. I needed confirmation. I needed and wanted someone else to tell me I was making the right choice. That's what I needed and wanted at the time. But over time, I realized something even more important. If I was constantly waiting for everyone else to understand my path, I'm never going to take the first step. Because not everyone is meant to understand your journey while you're in it. Some people only understand it after they've watched you walk it. They don't get it. And learning to trust myself in that space, in that mental and physical space, that started to change everything. But even after I let go of needing approval and permission, what I came face to face was something I did not expect. And it wasn't fear, it wasn't confusion, it was grief. Because underneath all the waiting, there was a quiet sadness for the version of me that I used to be. I yearned for her. I wanted her, that younger version of me, the version of me with more energy, the version who thought there would always be more time, the version who believed life would unfold in a certain way. I had visions and dreams of my life. I did not expect to grieve her. I thought I would just move on. And I realized I wasn't meant to go back to her, to that version of me. I was meant to understand her. I was meant to appreciate her. But I needed to keep moving forward with everything that she taught me. Because every version of me, it's led me here. It's led me to this version of me today. And once I stopped trying to recreate the past, once I stopped living in the past, it forced me to become curious about what's ahead. What is ahead for me? And that curiosity, it changed everything. Because I stopped asking, how do I get back to who I was? And instead, I started asking, who am I becoming now? Who is this version of me? It made me excited. And that shift created space for something new. It was not a younger version of me. It was not an old version of me either. But it started to make space for a more honest version of me, a more grounded version. That version of me that doesn't want to live life on pause anymore, that doesn't want to live life waiting for permission. And I think that's what this stage of life is really asking of us. It's not asking us to disappear. It's not asking us to shrink. It's not asking us to become less visible or less important, but to come back to ourselves and to come back fully, honestly, without any apology. I know that there are women watching this right now who have spent years waiting until they felt ready, waiting until they felt confident, waiting until life settled down, waiting until someone gave them permission. I know this because I was you not too long ago. And if that's you, I want you to hear this clearly. You don't need permission. You don't need perfect timing. You don't need all the answers. You just need the next step. You need to feel confident enough to put one step in front of the other slowly, because life doesn't change in one dramatic moment. It changes in small decisions, one step followed by the next step, until one day you realize you're no longer waiting, you're actually living. And maybe the life you've been waiting for isn't somewhere in the future. Maybe it's just waiting on the other side of the decision that you've already been thinking about. The most powerful thing you can do in this season of life is to stop waiting. Start trusting yourself. The biggest shift for me, it didn't come from trying to become someone else. It came from finally realizing that I don't have to wait to arrive at a better version of myself in order to start showing up for my life. I needed to accept the here and the now. Because somewhere along the way, I started believing that I had to earn my way back to myself, that I had to fix something. All those dreams that I didn't, and all those goals that I didn't get to accomplish. I felt like I had to improve something. I had to get it together first. But what if nothing is actually broken? What if this version of me, the one who is still figuring things out, the one who's still learning and still adjusting, that I'm already worthy of showing up for? Not a future version of me, not a more polished version of me, but this one, the one sitting right here, right now, in real time, this version of me. I think so many of us have been taught or programmed to think that we can only fully start living once we feel ready, once we feel confident, once we feel 100% certain that this is the right thing, that we can't move forward. But readiness, that's not a feeling that arrives and it stays. It's actually something we step into. And every time I waited for certainty, I realized that I delayed my own life a little bit longer. So now I'm learning something completely different. I don't need to become someone else in order to start choosing myself. I don't need to arrive somewhere new in order to begin again. I just need to stop abandoning myself. I need to stop ignoring myself in the present moment. And maybe that's what this really is. It's not becoming someone new, but finally staying with myself. Even here, even now. Especially here, especially now. The truth is, the life I kept waiting for, it isn't waiting for a future version of me. It's actually responding to the version of me that finally decides to show up and participate in it, actively participate in it, however imperfect, however unsure. I'm still becoming, because the woman you're becoming, that's the woman that's worth showing up for. And maybe this is the moment everything begins to shift. I know it did for me. And it's not because life finally gave you permission, but it's because you finally gave yourself permission. If this video resonated with you, I truly want to hear from you. And it's not as a viewer, but as a woman who has lived through her own seasons of waiting, through her own seasons of shifting and becoming and feeling uncertain and unsure. What have you been waiting on in your own life? And what would change if you stopped waiting just a little bit? And why not start today? Leave a comment below. I do read them, and this community reads them too. I love the engagement, and sometimes your words are exactly what another woman needs to hear. So please don't be shy. Please leave a comment. Let's build this community. If this message spoke to you, please like this video and subscribe to my channel. And I'm going to ask you for one more thing. Share it with someone who might need this reminder today, because none of us are really doing this alone. We are all in this together, but we're just learning slowly. We're learning how to come back to ourselves in real time. And I think that's what I want to leave you with. Not the idea of becoming someone different, not the pressure to fix or rebuild or reinvent everything at once. It's exhausting, it's overwhelming, we'll never start. Here's the simple truth: you don't have to wait for life to begin. You're already in it, you're living it. The only question I want you to ask yourself is whether you are willing to show up for it right now. Because the moment you do, the moment you accept that challenge, everything starts to change in ways you don't always notice right away. You're not going to see it right away. It's going to happen quietly, gently, but it will be permanent. And maybe that's the real shift. It's not becoming someone new, but finally choosing not to leave yourself behind anymore. Make yourself a priority. You're worth it. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And until the next one, adios.